All right, let's jump right in. We've got some breaking news coming out of Puerto Rico.
Yeah, big stuff happening there.
It's all about the upcoming election, and there's a lot of controversy.
Definitely a lot of tension surrounding it, especially when it comes to the counting of the early votes.
Yeah, there are some serious questions about whether or not the process is transparent.
Yeah, and there are even some accusations of manipulation.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, though, can we just do a quick overview of the major players in this political landscape?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So we've got 5 main parties, right?
Right. We've got the PNP,
Just
the New Progressive Party.
so the PNP.
We've got the PPD, the Popular Democratic Party,
Got it.
the MVC, the Citizens Victory Movement,
Oh, okay.
the PIP, the Puerto Rican Independence Party,
Uh-huh.
and the PD Project Dignity.
And each of these parties have different opinions on Puerto Rico's relationship with the United States.
Exactly. Which just adds another layer of complexity to an already very intricate situation.
For sure. So let's break down this early voting dispute. What exactly happened to trigger this whole controversy?
Well, things really came to a head when the PNP's electoral commissioner, Aníbal Vega Borges, he made this kind of unusual legal request.
Oh, really? Unusual in what way?
He asked the court to allow the PNP to start counting the early votes, even if representatives from other parties weren't there at the counting tables.
Hold on. Why wouldn't other parties be there for something so important?
Yeah, right.
That seems really suspicious.
It does. And it gets even more interesting because the Judge Raúl Candelario López, he actually ruled in favor of the PNP.
Oh, wow.
So he's allowing them to continue counting the votes without those representatives.
That's a big deal. What was the justification that the PNP gave for making this request?
Well, their argument, according to Vega Borges, is that the other parties basically just walked away from their spots at the counting tables.
What?
They're saying they did it on purpose to try to stall the whole process.
Oh, so they're just claiming that they're trying to keep things moving along.
Exactly. And they're also saying that any delays could actually push back the announcement of the election results.
I bet the other parties aren't happy about this.
Oh, they are not. And Juan Dalmau, he's the gubernatorial candidate for the PIP. He's been very, very vocal about his opposition to this ruling.
What's he saying?
He's actually calling on his supporters to become election officials themselves.
Wow.
Almost like a counter move to what he sees as the PNP trying to control the whole process.
So it's like a political tug of war.
Absolutely. And to make matters even worse, Vega Borges is now accusing the minority parties of deliberately blocking the process
Oh my.
so that a clear PNP victory wouldn't be obvious on election night.
So basically he's suggesting that they're trying to make people doubt the results before they're even fully out there.
Exactly. And it really speaks to the distrust that's surrounding this whole election. Now let's think about what all of this means for the people of Puerto Rico, the voters who are right in the middle of this political fight.
I mean, it's got to be stressful, right?
It's a really tough situation.
It's like they get to decide everything, you know? Like you're at a potluck and someone's like, no, only my dishes.
That is such a good analogy.
Yeah.
And when you have one party that's basically given all this power to just go ahead with no real oversight, it makes you question the whole thing.
Yeah, you lose that transparency. And when people lose trust in the process, it's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. They start to think their votes don't even matter.
And that can lead to people not even bothering to vote anymore. You know, apathy, disengagement, even unrest.
It makes you wonder about the long-term effects of all of this.
It sets a really bad precedent. If this is allowed to happen, what's to stop it from happening again and again?
Yeah. It's a slippery slope towards a system where the voters don't really have a say.
And that's just not what democracy is supposed to be about.
It makes you realize that this isn't just some isolated incident.
It's part of a bigger problem in Puerto Rico.
So you're saying this controversy is just a symptom of a much deeper issue?
Exactly. It's a reminder that even in places where democracy seems strong, you can't take it for granted.
We have to keep fighting for it.
And that's why what El Jangueo Carrillo is doing is so important.
They're keeping things in check.
They're providing that independent analysis, holding those in power accountable.
And they're not just presenting the facts. They're helping people understand the context, the history, the implications.
And they do it in a way that anyone can understand, even if you don't follow politics closely.
They really break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Sure.
This whole situation's a wake-up call. We can't afford to be complacent.
We need to stay involved. We need to demand better from our leaders.
And this deep dive has really shown us how valuable El Jangueo Carrillo is.
They're giving people a voice.
So if you haven't already, subscribe to their podcast on Spotify. You won't regret it.
Now let's talk about the impact all of this is having on the election itself.
It's got to be creating a lot of uncertainty.
And anxiety for the voters. They're wondering if the results will even be legitimate.
And that's a dangerous thing, when people start to doubt the system.
It undermines the whole idea of democracy.
And it also divides people even further.
It's like pouring gasoline on a fire.
This isn't just about who wins or loses this election. It's about the future of Puerto Rico.
This could have a huge impact on their political system.
It's a critical moment.
But it's not hopeless.
El Hyunggyo Koryo is proof of that.
They're giving us hope.
They're showing us that we can make a difference.
So let's keep this conversation going. Let's keep learning and questioning.
And most importantly, let's hold our leaders accountable.
Together, we can make sure that democracy wins in the end.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this election controversy in Puerto Rico, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from all of this?
You know, I think the biggest takeaway is that democracy, it's not something you just set up and forget about. It's more like a garden. It needs constant care and attention. And what's happening in Puerto Rico right now, it's a perfect example of that.
It really shows how important it is to stay informed and to stay involved.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and assume that things will work themselves out. We need to be active participants in our democracy. And that starts with understanding what's going on.
So as we've seen, this controversy has the potential to really change the political landscape of the island.
And it's a reminder that even in places where democracy seems strong, we can't take it for granted.
We need to be paying attention, and we need to hold our leaders accountable.
All of this makes you think, though, what can we do in our own communities to make sure we're protecting democracy?
That's a really good question. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by these big issues.
It is, but we can all make a difference.
Even small actions can have an impact.
Whether it's staying informed, talking about these issues, supporting organizations that are working for a better world.
Every little bit counts.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It's a reminder that democracy is precious, and we need to protect it.
We all have a role to play in making sure it thrives.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.